Good evening, everybody. It's Steve with Real Progressives, and we're having a great show tonight. I'm very excited be bringing my friend Nick Brana on momentarily. But before we do this, I want to say to all my friends out there, whether you're a progressive trying to fight within the Democratic Party, whether you're a Green trying to take down the establishment from the Green Party, whether you're a progressive independent trying to set up a new party through Arakel, or whether you are with Nick in the Draft Bernie for a People's Party movement, whatever your goals are, I want you to understand this. Real Progressives' goal is to support progressives, real progressives, wherever they are. So as part of that, we like to bring forward people like Nick who have an alternative pathway to bringing about the kind of change we're all hoping for. Now, unfortunately, one of the key reasons why I'm bringing Nick on is to help disabuse people of the mythology that has been led by a lot of propaganda, quite frankly, against what they're actually doing. Once you understand what Nick is actually doing, the light bulbs will go on and you will become part of the movement as well. That does not mean you have to love Bernie. So watch this. Nick, welcome to Real Progressive, sir.
Hey, Steve. Thanks. It's great to be with you again.
Absolutely. So, Nick, talk to me for a second about what the actual strategy of Draft Bernie is versus the one that you see circulating.
Right. So, to what you just brought up, some people have portrayed Bernie as like a Draft Bernie as a Bernie cult or a Bernie worshipers group. You know, it actually has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that Bernie is the analog of what the founders of the Democratic and the Republican parties were back then. So like you alluded to, there is a successful model for creating a third party in our own history. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. It happens when a major party, an establishment party, stops representing its base. And at that point, a politician within it who is trying to actually represent that base, represent the people within that establishment party, builds up a large following, just in the way Bernie has, just in the way that the former Whig Party officials who left, like Lincoln, and started the Republican Party just like they had. And so the idea is that they basically build a party within a party that consumes the original establishment party. But because of the original party's fixture and because of its existing kind of inability to change and its control, it's very hierarchical control by elites, by party bosses, that party, that faction within the party cannot actually change the party itself. That's what we see here. You know, even though a majority of Americans, let alone a majority of Democrats, support progressive issues, they've created an infrastructure designed over many, many years, decades even, that prevents progressives from taking over the Democratic Party. And there have been many attempts to do it before, and none of them have been successful. The Democratic Party has barreled straight through them. But there is that successful model for creating an alternative party, and it's buried inside our own history. And that's exactly what we're trying to do now. You know, so it's not necessarily about, you don't have to think that Bernie is perfect on every single issue in order to support this. You know, all you have to do is recognize that what we're doing follows the path of others who have successfully taken down an establishment party and become a major party themselves.
So that, to me, is probably the most fundamental point that you're going to make here tonight. I mean, there's a lot of good things that we're going to talk about, but this is a particular one. We have had people come here and saying, oh my God, you've got to stop the whole Bernie worship. And let's be fair, you and I had this conversation. There are some Bernie worshipers out there. Don't count yourself in that mix. That's not how this is set up. And the whole Bernie as a hero thing, don't get me wrong, I'm sure Bernie's got a 40-year track record of doing things that make us better than we were before. but Bernie is not flawless. In fact, Bernie, quite frankly, is doing things that are even making your skin cringe a little bit here. I mean, talk a little bit about the concept of using Bernie. I'm going to use my language. You transcribe this, all right? I see Bernie in the regards that you're using him. It's almost like a cartoon of sorts where you're saying, hey, Bernie, we see you over there. We don't even remotely approve of what you're doing in the way that you're doing it over there. Why don't you come on out here and lead a real movement? And this is like the Trojan horse to get the Democrats that follow, to kind of have that whole herd mentality, to kind of lead right out of, you know, the Democratic Party and into a progressive third party. Do I have that in my own way right, or is there a better way or a different way of saying that?
So Bernie, no progressive is going to be perfect on all of the issues. Nobody's going to have everything down, you know. And there are people who've obviously disagreed with Bernie's comments, you know, for example, on Syria recently. And so that's why the purpose of this is not to anoint Bernie the autocrat, the king of the new party. That's not it at all. The point is that Bernie has the power to create a new party successfully. It's a strategy. And Bernie has the ability to do that because he already did. He did it during the primaries. That coalition of independents, young people, even conservatives, he's beloved by conservatives in his own state when conservatives get to know him. You've seen him, I know, Steve, at all of these town halls that he's doing, all of the speeches he's giving in red states. People love him. And so it's not about, you know, this traditional political ideology that's set up to kind of divide us. And it's not about either just saying, you know what, we're going to go with whatever Bernie wants. No, this is supposed to be thoroughly democratic, you know, through the institution itself. The party institution of the Democratic Party is not. We just saw, I mean, all of us kind of bore witness to this spectacle where the Democratic Party appointed its chairman without any input from all of its millions of followers. You know, and so that needs to change because you can't have a party that actually represents people when the structure itself is designed to be very elite, is designed to basically empower the party bosses. And so what's going to happen here, what will happen if the People's Party, or whatever folks would like to call it, because People's Party is not the official name, it's a placeholder, it's a description for what the party should be, should represent the people as opposed to the establishment and the oligarchs. So when that party is formed, what would happen is that we would have a founding convention, at which point progressives from across the country would be able to give their input and craft the platform together. And that platform that emerges from there, that's designed by the people, is going to be stronger than what any one individual could design, could make. It's going to actually be represented. It's going to be cathartic too. You know, because it'll represent the people taking back power in our country.
So let me ask you something, Nick, because I want the people to understand this. If Bernie says no, you still go forward, right? I mean, help people understand that this is a strategy. This is not a cult. It's not a worship service. It's not some newfangled Southern religion with snake handling. It's just straight up a strategy once again. So if he says no, as someone said, well, he's already said no. Okay, proceed. Please take that one for me.
So first of all, when I started this, I wasn't sure how Bernie would react. I wasn't sure how the movement would react. You know, I wasn't sure whether it had a chance of succeeding. And now, Steve, I'm more confident than ever that it can and that it will. The narrative has changed dramatically. And it's, you know, it's easy to miss this. But back about 3 months ago in January, and certainly before then, November and December, there was very little conversation about doing something like this. You know, now, anytime I go onto Bernie's Facebook page or his Twitter, I see the comments on there, and I see that it's like a third of them, half of them are saying, Bernie, just start your own damn party already. Like, so that's a really profound shift in the narrative. And not just that, but when we started off, we would obviously hunt for our own social media and to discuss with others, and to see what others were saying. We would hunt for articles, for people who were basically talking about this perspective as well. And it would be difficult to find content. Now, Steve, it's everywhere. Is it content saying that the Democratic Party is coming to an end? It's a dead party, and that something new needs to arise out of its ashes is everywhere. So I want to reflect on that progress that has been made. And of course, like you said, if Bernie was ever to just say no, kind of like outright, which again, I don't think is going to happen because Bernie's already said that a third party is the option if the Democratic Party doesn't reform. And I think that's becoming increasingly clear to all of us. As if he didn't, then it wouldn't change anything fundamental about what's happening in the country. It wouldn't change the fact that millions of people have no confidence in Democrats or Republicans. It wouldn't change the fact that 57% of the country wants a major new party. It wouldn't change the fact that 82% of the country was disgusted with the two parties in the election that we just had. It wouldn't change the fact that independents are the largest group, far larger than Democrats or Republicans. And it wouldn't change the fact that this has been a long time coming. It's actually a long time trend for decades. It's kind of been a protracted process of the dissolution of the two major parties as they've moved so far from where people want to be, so far, and made life so unbearable for people.
Now, is this, Nick, about Bernie running for president, or is this about Nick bringing Bernie to help create a people's party that would then in turn nominate a person for president? Or is this anything of the above? Because I want to clear this up, because a lot of people say, well, this is what I think that means, so that's what it must mean. Just like they do when we talk economics, they say things that don't really have any reality to them. What is it exactly? What is the goal here? Talk to me about that.
Great question. So what we're doing is we are drafting Bernie to start a new party. We're drafting him to start a people's party, a party that represents actual people, that is not funded by the same oligarchs that fund both the Democratic and Republican Party, the same corporations, even the same individuals frequently. So that's what we're trying to do, not just to basically say that it has to be only Bernie either, but I think that by building this strength, essentially, by building this is showing people that there is a better way, and by doing that, we might get to the point where we can create the party ourselves. And I really think it's moving in the direction of a new party, and I see it everywhere. Just like I said, in media coverage and in the Facebook posts, in the social media, it's an incredible kind of movement in that direction that we're seeing before our very own eyes, Steve.
Now, as we've talked, I'm very sympathetic to the Green Party for so many reasons. But let's be fair, the Green Party had the impetus, if you will, for the American people to look at a disgusting war hawk in Hillary Clinton and an even worse guy in it. Well, you know what? I'm not even going to say even worse. I'm going to say her peer in Donald Trump. With that in mind, the Green Party, let's just say that we had 4% election fraud across the country. We still didn't crack 5% with the Green Party. What do you think is the difference? Why do you suppose this works? What do you suppose their Achilles heel is? And why do you suppose you guys could work together in the future?
Right. And so what another thing that I'm sure everybody's taken note of, including you, Steve, is that the progressive movement at this point is going in all kinds of directions. There's all kinds of things starting up and all kinds of, different groups kind of vying for attention. And if Bernie, that is a byproduct of the fact that that a lot of people rationally do not want to submit to the Democrats anymore. But a lot of progressives, and in fact the majority of the country, but there's no clear direction among all of those different groups and all of those different progressives who are not satisfied with the establishment parties, the majority of the country at this point. If Bernie was to step in and say that we're starting a new party, that would automatically be basically the unifying strategy that would thread together all of the different things that the progressive movement is doing now. And it would, like we talked about earlier, it would be the death knell of the Democratic Party. And I think it would happen so fast. Just this week, in fact, there was a great article written in The Intercept, and there was one in Jacobin too, about how Bernie's equivalent, kind of in France, has started his own party, and he has basically decimated the traditional liberal party, their version of the Democrats. And in fact, he is becoming the biggest check against Marine Le Pen, against the far right in France. And there's this terrific meme that they're circulating in France in support of him, saying basically that in order to prevent the far right, in order to prevent Marine Le Pen from taking power, you need to pick, you can only combat that with the progressive populist left. And so they say, it would have been necessary to pick Sanders in order to beat Trump here in our own election. And they're saying, don't make the same mistake over there. Pick their equivalent of Sanders, who is running in a party that he created and is doing fabulously. And so that's, I think, like the evidence just keeps mounting, that's what we need to do.
So, okay, I'm going to say something to you, and I'm not expecting you to have an economic answer for this, just to level set, okay? But I want to do a parallel for the struggle you and I are each going through in our own right. We have got some very, very devoted followers on Real Progressives who absolutely despise Bernie Sanders now, whether they're heartbroken from what happened, or whether they've just bought into different things, or whether, quite frankly, his behavior with Syria and Russia and all the other things that have come up of late, Hillary and I are of one heart kind of crap. That is really, really so, whoa, no, I can't do anything with that. Now, flip forward here. I did a video the other night where I talked about how, at some point in time, I got to recognize that 90+% of America is absolutely, I almost want to block you out of this so you don't get pinned with what I'm about to say, but 90% of America is just flat out dumb as a box of rocks. And at the end of the day, they follow the herd. And when we talk economics, it smacks them in the forehead. And they're like, no, that's not what it is. Bernie said. And you've experienced some of the problems that I'm talking about. But reality is that somehow or another, if I want to get outside of my own echo chamber of people who have bought into modern monetary theory, who it's not buying in, it's what is there, but who have opened themselves to it, I have to find a different way to message. I have to find a different way to address this. Otherwise, I'm just going to be in an angry group of like 500 people, and we're going to get nowhere, and we're going to get nowhere very, very fast. You're suggesting, folks, I hear your pain. I hear your anger. I'm not joining the Democratic Party. Don't confuse me, fools. You're saying I'm trying to bring him out because I know he's like a chick magnet, but for Democrats and others, and he'll just suck them out like a leech sucking the virus. I mean, I don't know how else best to say it. He is like pulling people out of the party is the intent. You're not telling people to join him. So when people say all this stuff about Bernie, they're missing the point like entirely. Like in my mind, and again, these are not your words, these are my words. I see this as the ultimate means of allowing people that are scared shitless of leaving the duopoly to pull out of it finally and go and take a step outside and into a third party. Now, one more caveat to this. If you notice during the primaries and in the general election, you saw Greens and everybody else that was independent lifting up the LOL Libertarians so that they could get up on the stage because it was all about third parties. Well, this is a third party. You're not asking people to join the Democratic Party. You're saying, guys, we don't want to be there. Get the hell out. If we've got a dragon kicking and screaming, we're going to get the one guy that can be the Pied Piper to pull them the hell out. Am I right? I mean, I'm saying it my own way. Am I close?
Yes, it's about basically telling him, saying, Bernie, this is what we need to do. And there will come a point, Steve, where I think there will be, if we can keep working towards this, if we really put the time and energy into it, where there will be so much of the progressive movement that is saying, enough. Let's create a new People's Party. Let's create a new party. And at that point, Bernie will realize that the progressive movement is not behind the Reform the Democratic Party strategy, basically. Now, and when that happens, Bernie will know. Bernie knows that he needs the progressive movement to be in order to achieve whatever strategy he would like to achieve. Granted, the Democratic Party reform strategy is not working even with Bernie there. And even with Bernie being there, and I find this remarkable, even with Bernie being there and saying, that he wants to reform the Democratic Party, working his hardest at it, people are still leaving the party. That's astonishing to me. It tells you, what would happen if Bernie said, hold on a minute, let me stop swimming against the populist current, essentially, that is, leaving the establishment parties. Let me join it instead and swim with the populist current. That party would just collapse. It would collapse so fast that, he is not the one bringing people into the party because nobody's doing it. Nobody can do that, despite his best efforts, his earnest efforts. Now, though, what he could do is simply reverse course, bring people out of it in massive numbers and build that coalition, rebuild that coalition that he built in 1 year. In 1 year, Steve, he built on the campaign basically he built a new party. He built a political revolution. He built that coalition of independents, young people, conservatives, progressives, and he could do that again, except permanently.
So let me ask you a question, because we've got a lot of progressive independent party people that come and watch our shows as well. Where did you and I meet physically for the first? No, we talked before, but where did we actually meet? Where was it again? It was
right. So we met at a progressive independent party summit, Occupy Inauguration Summit in Washington, D.C. And I helped Eric Bloss of PIP plan that event and sat on a panel at the end of the conference with Ralph Nader and Jill Stein. And so I have the utmost respect for what the Green Party has tried to do. And in fact, if something like Draft Bernie succeeds, it will be because the Green Party laid the groundwork. But I think we have to be honest and strategic. Again, it's about strategy. It's not about a particular brand. It's about a strategy, and what's going to work. And so we have to be honest. We just faced the two most despised candidates practically in American history, and the Green Party and the Libertarian Party, neither one of them could break 5%.
That's right.
And that's also, because...
I'm sorry, you also, though, are, I would call us all in like a coalition, if you will, already. You are partners of sort. We're a part of a larger left-wing coalition outside the duopoly, the Progressive Independent Party, Draft Bernie, and a host of others. And I mean, the Green Party has been participating. We've had the Socialist Alternatives participating. Now, obviously, everybody's very intent on their own label, intent on their own brand, intent on all these things. But we are coming together as a group of friendlies that aren't sitting there kicking the legs out from under of each other. We're actually working together. So this is not some sort of a frenemy thing. This is like an alliance. I mean, right?
Yes. We're all working towards the same goal. We're all fundamentally people who realize that the duopoly doesn't hold the answers anymore, and that we've reached a point where we can actually do something different, And so for me, the thought process goes, well, okay, the Democratic and Republican parties are the ones that have led us down this path, essentially. So once you decide that that's not going to work, that reforming the Democratic Party isn't going to work, then it's a question of, well, what should we do instead? What can we do instead? And you think, how at that point, what kind of strategy can we have successfully? And I think we can all agree, even those who don't particularly think that it should happen, but we can all agree that if Bernie was to start a party, that party would be viable and it would be incredibly popular. And so that's why all of these barriers that are set up to go to what I was saying about the Green Party and the Libertarian Party not being able to break 5% this past election, despite, supposedly the most favorable circumstances, is that the system of first past the post and the system of the spoiler effect is very effective at constraining, at attacking. This electoral system that the two parties have built is very effective at attacking third parties at the takeoff stage, and so on the runway, so that they can't actually get off. And that's why the strategy that works before and has worked before with the Republican Party and the founding of the Democratic Party, of those two parties, and can work again now, is when popular politicians that represent a neglected majority in the establishment parties bring over that following. And they skip that takeoff stage entirely because they have, from the onset, a party with millions of people, which happens to better represent that constituency than the establishment party that they're overthrowing.
So let me ask you a question here, Nick. I have personally watched some Demeter people and some other folks that have literally eviscerated you. They've put you out there. They've said horrible things, not about you per se, because who could dislike you, but they really, really do say awful things about this not understanding. Can you talk to me a little bit about some of the typical attacks that you receive and some of the typical counters that you all have to put in place?
Mm-hmm. Well, you've brought up a number of them. One of them is, for example, that a third party could never get ballot access. Well,
right.
Well, ballot access works state by state. And there's signature requirements individual to each state, thousands of signatures per state. Well, guess what? We have to do that any time that a presidential candidate wants to run for office. You have to do that. Anytime that the Greens or an existing third party wants to run for office, wants to maintain ballot status, they have to do that. So it's not impossible. It's just, and with Bernie's millions of followers across the country, we would make quick work of that. This wouldn't be. Some people have made this false comparison about, it took decades for the Green Party to get ballot access. It's like, well, that's why this is different. It's like you're not talking about saying I'm going to build something from nothing. You're talking about saying I'm going to take what was already built during the primary. A new party was built during the primary, and I'm going to bring it over. I'm going to make it a real party. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to have a founding convention. We're going to create the platform. We're going to get on the ballot. We're going to challenge congressional districts in 2018, and then we're going to run a president in 2020, and we're going to run at every level, state, municipal, and we're going to sweep out with, because I'll tell you right now, there's little doubt in my mind that a People's Party candidate, a new progressive populist party, would just destroy the two establishment parties, destroy them in 2020. And that down ballot effect, that of people straight ballot voting down the ballot, would sweep out the establishment in one big go.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I want to say this real quickly. Your idea of taking this revolution, and that's not the person. It was never the person. It was always not me, us. So this us, you were always trying to take us and remind us what us was and what us could be. Okay. And for me, my strategy, in a parallel universe, working in concert with trying to pull people out again, has been to remind folks that it's not just about the us part of it. It's about what was driving the entire platform that made people get up out of their seat and say, hell yes. Mm-hmm. And for me, when I look at this, I remind myself every day as people get wrapped around the axle about Donald Trump's comb over, as they get wrapped around the axle about the next shiny object, the next weirdo tweet by Spicer, whatever else shiny object garbage that distracts from this. I'm there trying to remind folks that it took, in that 1 year of time while he ran, everybody was sitting there saying Bernie's ideas were pie in the sky. Frickin' scumbag Mother Jones sat there and lambasted him throughout the entire campaign. That jerk Kevin Drum. I mean, they sat there and literally dropped deuces on the entire platform. Then all of a sudden, we get to the end and it's like, hey, that's what everybody wants. It's like, you don't say. But the problem is that it took a year to get everybody to finally believe that those platform ideas could happen, that they weren't just some dream, that they really could happen. And I'm telling you right now, it will take more than a year for us to make folks have the momentum, to have that entire New Deal philosophy come waving through and force its way through and crush the orthodoxy. That's the only way it's going to happen. So from my end, I'm saying to myself, I cannot let the platform of Bernie Sanders. This is not, for me, it's not about Bernie Sanders. It was always about his economic team, and that's how I ended up coming into Bernie Sanders, not the other way around. So for me, I'm trying to carry that message forward. I was carrying this message basically for 5 years prior to this, but I'm nobody. Then Bernie gave voice to it. So now all of a sudden, I'm like that guy holding on for dear life to force this platform all the way to the goal line. It's like Super Bowl Sunday. You're fighting to the end. And I see people already falling off, drifting away, focusing on this and that. Nick, this to me is the single greatest challenge that your movement, what you're doing specifically does, and what I'm doing. People get distracted very, very easily. They get caught up in what they think they can't do as opposed to dreaming about what they can do. Talk to me a little bit about the power of positivity and making this stuff happen.
Yeah. So during the campaign, we really, it was a rise to kind of this crescendo, basically, and that rise to me was step one. Step one in the successful model for building a new party in our history is you build that following inside an establishment party no longer represents its base. Step two is what we're trying to do now, where you take that following and you formalize it in a new party. Talking about the positivity, really, if people could take away 1 point from this interview with you and I, and about the entire, perhaps even the entire Draft Bernie movement, it would be that when Bernie started, he had nothing. He had nothing. The media was against him. The party was against him. He had no money. He was running against a household name, anointed candidate. And he was taking on the entrenched oligarchy of this country. Now, like any one of those factors, no name recognition either. It was like 3% name recognition across the country. Any one of those things, Steve, would have taken down another candidate.
Absolutely.
Why did Bernie succeed? Because he had something more valuable than that, actually. It's because there is a currency more valuable than that in our politics at this point. And that's integrity and his message. All Bernie had when he started running against all odds was his integrity and his message. And the money came afterwards, the $250 million, The more than 13 million primary votes came afterwards. The fact that he's the most popular politician in the country came afterwards. All of that followed. The real source of his power, the real wellspring of our power as a movement, is that integrity and is that message. And our success depends on staying there.
It's what you just said. I'm sorry, I'm splitting the screen for a second, Nick. What you just said was very, very vital, and I hope people hear it. The Draft Bernie movement is about integrity. It's about that currency that goes beyond the money and all the other stuff. It's not the man, it's the integrity of the movement. It's us. This is a very key thing to me, what you just said. I just want to put an exclamation point on it, sir.
And thank you. We started in very much the same way, Steve. Like, look at Justice Democrats. Justice Democrat, they had not one, but two of the largest independent media organization when they started up, You look at our revolution at Bernie's name. I was a part of that when it began. That's huge advantages, huge initial advantages. When we started up with Draft Bernie, we didn't have anything but the idea. All we had was the message and the integrity. And look at where we are now, And to me, it's like, does that remind you of anything? And we've come really far. Like I said, I look at Bernie's posts. I speak to progressives now, on the phone all day, and people are ready for this, And it's just about a message whose time has come.
You know what? I agree with you. I want to talk to you about something you and I spoke about on the phone earlier today that I think is vital. You and I share some very similar pet peeves. And maybe the most important pet peeve of them all to me is I'm angry as hell and I'm not going to take it any longer, but damn it, don't give me a solution. When you give people a solution, they act like you've got four heads. They say, let me see your credentials. Who are you to tell me a solution? How dare you act like you know the solution? Who are you to tell me a solution? I just want to be angry. Let me flail my arms around on camera. Let me just be angry and fan the flames of anger. We're not going to talk solutions. We're just going to be angry. Do you agree? Is that like the biggest Achilles heel for our movement or what?
It is. You're right. It's a pet peeve, and it actually it's a detriment, I think, because this is something that Bernie and his campaign exemplified, actually, and even Obama and his campaign exemplified, is when you just focus on the negative, when you just focus on what's wrong. So focusing on that, being negativity without offering alternatives, that demoralizes people. That creates cynics. It makes cynics out of people, and it tells them that nothing can be done. And that's when people withdraw. That's when people say, well, nothing we can do about it. Forget this. I'll just go try and live in a bubble, of myself and basically unplug from all of this. And that's exactly, that the establishment would love for us to do that. On the other hand, when you present what's wrong with society, and you couple that with an alternative, with a vision, with a solution, that produces hope instead in people. The distance between those two things is what you need. It's not just because human nature, as we've seen throughout history, is that people have a high tolerance for accepting really crushing, terrible situations and systems of living, basically. And what it takes is not just to tell people over and over how bad things are. It's to tell them that things are bad, but there's a better way. And then once you present those two things together, and people can see this is where we are in our system right now, and in their own mind, this is where we could be. This is where other countries, have that have more socialized healthcare plans, or extend education to 16 years into college. The distance between those two things is what teaches people, is what motivates people.
I want to say something important, and it's important to me anyway. I'll let you determine whether this is important. But I want the people out there that are saying Bernie's not a solution, etc., to keep their hate of Bernie if they want to. I'm not here to dissuade you. I'm not here to support Bernie. I'm here to support progressives leaving the fricking Democratic Party and starting a movement outside that. I don't care what else you have to say. I mean, not you, Nick, but to the audience at large. My concern here is that even if you despise Bernie, this is not Bernie. What you're doing is creating the revolution that he pulled together, and you're pulling it out of the Republican Party. What does it matter, right? The Democrat, Republican, the same freaking animal, right? So what you're doing, and it bothers me, God, it's like we've said it so many times, and yet I saw somebody say Bernie's not a solution, and it's somebody who I care about and I like and watches our shows, and it's guy. We never said Bernie was the solution. What we're saying is, historically, you wrote a great article about Bernie could be the next Abraham Lincoln. And for people that only read the headline, they'll miss the strategy behind what your words were. But it was a poignant article that spoke, and you've already addressed this, so we don't need to go through it again, but maybe we do, obviously. But the idea is that the only time that the duopoly has ever really been toppled is when you take these personalities and suck the life out of the one party and then create its replacement all in one fell swoop. And that has happened with the Whigs and Lincoln and all the other rest. I mean, talk about that for just a moment, just so folks understand that nobody is saying Bernie is the salvation of the world, that the Lord Jesus Christ hath saith. Nobody's saying that, right?
Right. And Bernie wouldn't come alone. With Bernie would come people in Congress, along with just like millions of people would come with, and there would be automatic representation in Congress, in the Senate. And so that would be an automatic jumping off platform for running candidates in 2018 and then 2020. And so you're right. That's how it has worked before in our own history. And that's what's important to recognize, is that you're not talking about, building something out of nothing, which is extremely difficult to do in our own political system. Instead, what we're trying to do is we're saying, once you've built up the capital by using those institutions like the Democratic Party and the Republican Party to build up the capital, the social capital, the political capital, the media capital, the following, and you've reached the point where you have a following and you have influence independently of those gatekeeper institutions. That's when you can leave and you can found a new party that can actually take down the existing parties. And like I said earlier, and it bears repeating, 57% of the country wants a new party. 57%. That's the majority right there. We are in the majority, So it's easy to forget that with the media gaslighting that we face all the time.
So I saw something really funny. It was like Bernie needs to be sheepdog back into his own revolution. I'm sorry, that caught me off. That was funny. Way to go, Nicholas. I guess one more thing. I'm still rolling on that one. I guess one thing I wanted to say is that this is truly not anti-Green Party at all. This is pro-third party, which right. would encompass the Green Party by extension. This is not in any way shape. The Green Party has got to have some help, and you need some help, and we all need some help. And I'm telling you right now, I kid you not, I don't want to just sit on the sidelines angry. I want to friggin' take the economics of Warren Mosler and Stephanie Kelton and Randall Wray and on and on and on and on and on, and I want to make that happen. And it is not going to happen as long as the Democratic Party keeps parading Joseph Stiglitz, friggin' the goon of a man, Paul Krugman, and the rest of these friggin' scumbags that are literally neocon, neoliberal harpies of scum, so devoid of value and so evil that they would literally let us die. And this is no joke. Once you understand the economics of neoliberalism, they would rather us die than actually give us any of the things that Bernie fought for, any of the things that Jill fought for. And honest to God, Jill even tried to recruit Bernie for a People's Party. Did she not? I mean, Jill Stein tried to recruit Bernie for a People's Party in the Green Party. What the hell are people? Anyway, keep going, man.
And Steve, to extend the historical analog, because it's so powerful, there were smaller abolitionist parties before the Republican Party finally successfully overthrew the Whig Party. They existed before. For example, the Free Soil Party existed before. The Green Party is more of an analog of the Free Soil Party, for example, but in and itself, it had the message first, and it was actually obviously organizing around that, but in and itself had not been able to overthrow the establishment parties. It took a new party that arose at that moment, right after. And I really should cover more of this because it is just the parallels are so remarkable. So in 1852, the Whig Party crafted a platform that was pro-slavery, and its base had grown anti-slavery. And so in response to that, upon having approved a platform and gone with a platform that the base didn't support, people didn't show up to vote for the Whig Party. And that election was a disaster for the Whig Party. Ring any bells? An establishment party that doesn't recognize its base and then leads them basically depresses turnout because of that. And so what happened afterwards is where we are in the stage, in the comparison basically, which is that a new party arose, a Republican Party, built by Lincoln and other founders who used to be in the Whig Party. And they formed the party within 2 years of forming that party. First of all, it's not just like creating a new party that's going to be parallel to the Green Party and that kind of thing. This would unite Greens. It would bring together Greens. I think it's kind of silly to think that would exist independently. I think this would become the Progressive Populist Party, and all would come together. All progressives could come together and design the platform here in this new party. And so within 2 years, they were able to get this influential foothold in Congress. Within 4 years, they had basically replaced the Whig Party. And within 6 years, they had taken both houses of Congress and the presidency and elected Abraham Lincoln. And so that is the trajectory I would like us to follow here. Establishment party that basically abandons its following, after which its base, along with so many others who never considered themselves Democrats to begin with, come together and form something that is actually at the center of where people are. Because the Democratic and Republican parties, even though the establishment media really wants you to believe that the center is between them, the political center is between them, that's false. Democratic and Republican parties are off to the right, the two of them, far off to the right. That's the billionaire spectrum right there. The Democrats are the left wing of the billionaire spectrum. The Republicans are the right wing of the billionaire spectrum. Where people actually are is far off to the left about where Bernie was. Bernie is a centrist when it comes to the actual views of people on the issues.
I want to say something. If I could, and I don't have it in front of me, and I wish I did because I'd show it right here up into the grill, but the picture of you with Nader and Jill on the same stage, right? All of us in the same room, hanging out for days on end, talking about stuff. Nobody's sitting here yelling and screaming, and like this one person, which really makes me angry, it had some really nasty thing to say. It's like we sat there, all of us in this room, and we were all saying the same things. We were all agreeing on the same stuff. The problem is that, just like Fat Bastard said in Austin Powers, everyone loves their own brand, We're talking about people that are so tied to their quote unquote identity, that the object is just to tear anything down, and you cannot win anything with 1%, 5%, even 15% won't win you anything. We've got to get a movement here that can actually win. And the problem comes down to is that without having a tribal coalition of groups to come together and create this entity, we're all screwed. And the GOP, here I'm going to break into economics for a minute. The GOP is very, very close to being able to call a constitutional convention. Very, very close, like ridiculously close. And their top goal is a balanced budget amendment. Balanced budget amendment, first of all, is economic suicide, and it's a sign of an economic dollarati. But more importantly, though, it's their master plan to keep us all hungry while they go ahead and continue to privatize and pillage the entire nation. The Koch brothers are behind this. Paul Ryan is behind this. Ron Paul, all these people, Rand Paul, all of these right-wing freakazoids are all for this, okay? And at the same time, our groups are so splintered. The Democrats that you're trying to lure out of the vote blue world, the people that you're trying to lure out, are in no way, shape, or form Green Party people. They had a chance to vote for the Greens this time and beat Donald Trump with a third party, and they chose to vote for the shill, the evil, wicked Hillary Clinton. And so what we're talking about is we've got to find a way to crack the seal so we can build that critical mass. And the only way to do that is to leverage someone that has that chutzpah, if you will, to draw those people. We're not talking about an echo chamber where we all agree, all of us people outside the party already, we all agree with each other, no problem. We're talking about the massive amount of people that have to vote in order for us to actually have what we need. And it's not going to happen if we don't recognize the fact those people are deeply entrenched in the just vote blue, and they ain't coming out without a shepherd to lure them sheep right out of the field. I mean, am I close? Am I even within the zip code?
Absolutely. I mean, the way that I looked at it back in November when Trump won, and I said something drastic needs to happen, and I started looking into this, was that in order for a third party to be successful now, any third party is going to need two things. You're going to need, first of all, to be able to achieve critical mass of supporters to overthrow the establishment parties. You're going to need also, for the closest individual that we have to a movement leader, who is Bernie Sanders, to basically step outside of the establishment parties, because it's impossible to set up a party where it would be exponentially difficult. I'm not going to say impossible, because it wouldn't be, but it would be exponentially more difficult to create a successful third party as long as the individual that sparked the political revolution is working inside an establishment party. And with that, I mean, there was this incredibly revealing comment that was made by Democratic strategists recently, and it was covered in an article, I think, in The Hill, and it was, Bernie's great, the strategist was saying. We just get to slap him on like a Band-Aid onto our party and not change anything fundamental about it. And that, I think a lot of us would agree that that's how the Democratic Party is using Bernie, of course, is that they've shown no intention, and so like some of the last things I want to say are that this tour that Bernie is doing with Perez now, for example. Well, first of all, I think it shows a couple of things. First of all, that tour was actually planned before Perez was appointed chairman by the superdelegates of the party. And then Perez worked his way, basically forced his way onto that tour rather than being invited by Bernie. And that's an entirely different interpretation, basically. That gives an entirely different understanding of what happened there. And if for anybody who has not watched their joint interview, actually, a couple of days ago. Go watch that after this, because it is the most awkward thing, the two of them. I never thought I was going to praise Chris Hayes, but Chris Hayes actually followed up with Perez, and Fort kept his feet to the fire and said, but wait a minute, do you actually support that? And Perez was basically just gaslighting Bernie right in front of Bernie, would not say a single thing progressively, would not actually support that. And Bernie, I've seen hundreds of interviews with Bernie. I've never seen Bernie looking so uncomfortable and so off-put as I have in that interview with Perez. It's almost as if they belong in two different parties, for Christ's sake.
So, okay, I want to say something real quickly, and I want you to answer as honestly as I know you can answer. It really, really bothered you to watch Bernie Sanders trumpeting the Russian narrative and the Syrian narrative. And for a lot of people that really are saying, I couldn't follow Bernie, out of a fire, explain the fact that you're not supportive of those things. And this is not in any way, shape, or form, in any way, lauding that. I mean, that's disgusting to you as well, is it not?
Well, there's a great bumper sticker that says, I'm already against the next war. And I think a lot of us in the progressive community feel that way. And so that's why, again, it's not about just saying we're going to do whatever Bernie does anytime. It's not about it's not a rubber stamp on whatever the heck Bernie is going to do, basically. It's instead saying, Bernie, you're someone who brought us this far in the political revolution. You have the power to bring us the rest of the way. And this is how you can do it, essentially.
Well, okay, Nick, I'm going to say something for myself here, because first things first, I don't know who in the world thinks that I suddenly bump my head and I'm suddenly eating bullshit. But let me explain to anybody that even confuses. I want to get the people that do suckle on the MSM bullshit train, I want to get them out of that world and into a world of reality. I can't do that, as I've tried every single day of the week, every single night. We're lucky to get, right now we've got 130 people watching. Maybe by tomorrow there'll be 30 or 40,000 have seen this, maybe. But the reality is there's millions and millions of people out there that never watch Real Progressives, never watch any YouTube, never watch any of this stuff. All they do is turn the TV on and watch CNN and veg out. And they say, yep, I know everything I need to know. The Russians stole the election. Syrians gassed their own people, blah, 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 blah. And I'll turn the TV off. And they've got enough info and they're done. Now, for us people that are quote unquote woke, we can't win anything with about, 1%. Sadly, we've got to reach a whole hell of a lot more than that. Now, you go ahead and be righteously indignant in the mirror, hold your fist up, do selfies with your fist in the air, whatever it takes to make you feel edgy and slick. I'm telling you, I'm already out. I'm not buying any bullshit. I am not in. So I don't have to buy any bullshit. I care about the freaking sheepdogs and the sheep that are stuck that we need to pull out. Now, if that doesn't make sense to you, I'm really sorry. I need you to wake up, because we as a little tiny band of, really, really edgy people are not winning anything on our own. We need a coalition, no matter how badly you don't like them or how low information they are or how stupid they are or whatever. We don't win anything without that movement coming out of the duopoly. That's just a fact, Jack. Period. Full stop. I'm sorry, Nick. I just had to say that.
The good news is that it is. It is coming out of the duopoly. And not even Bernie Sanders, working as hard as he can to transform that dead party into something progressive, can do it. And that's how far down that strategy has sunk, basically, is that you need to ask nicely to the establishment. I mean, we're to the point where you need to ask nicely. Hey, Perez, could you please represent people? Like when you're down to that point in the reform strategy, I think you really need to re-examine. It's like, when has asking the establishment worked?
Right.
When has it worked nice? Asking them nicely.
All right, so I'm going to do one thing here real quick because we're at that 9 o'clock hour, and I know you've got a call here momentarily. I want to take 2 seconds and talk about Bernie Sanders economics. We don't have to go too deep into it, but the reality is that not one single candidate that we've ever come close to looking at has had an opportunity to win that has put forward such a robust agenda. The entirety that was backing that agenda was fueled by modern monetary theory and the MMT economists that supported Bernie. Sadly, I am watching the People's Summit that is in Chicago, and not one of the economists that supported Bernie have been invited. I haven't seen Stephanie Kelton's name. I haven't seen Bill Black's name. I haven't seen Randall Wray's name. I haven't seen James Galbraith's name. I haven't seen any of them. I am very, very concerned that people don't understand that we can have all of this today. This isn't something 100 years down the road. This is something we could have today if we but took the plan that was there and transported it to the present and stopped getting diverted. Nick, I know that as much as you're trying to do this, the reason is the platform. You support the platform. The platform is 100% people friendly. Just like Jill Stein, you put the two together and you've got something incredible that would unite all of us, that would crush the world. But you've got to be able to answer the almighty question, how are you going to pay for it? And that's the thing that Bernie brought to the table. They would say these things that drove me nuts about, we'll make Wall Street speculation tax. It'll solve the problem. We bailed them out. They're going to bail us out. But we know, based on his entire economic team, that federal taxes literally don't fund spending. They're required, they're needed for a host of reasons, but they're like economic reasons not to pay for stuff. So why is it that we can't get people to say unified on the platform? Why is it that the platform is so difficult for folks to hold on to and carry on to the goal line? What do you think about that?
Mm-hmm. So I think people are unified around the platform. I think that's part of what I laid out in the original article, is that over just down the line, Bernie's issues down the line, single payer, free public college, their equal pay. I mean, just for every issue, breaking up the big banks, that was the populist position. And that was the position that was essentially most popular. And that's why he could spark a political revolution in a single year. I think with MMTs, it's a special case because the messaging was more difficult and the campaign, didn't necessarily tackle that explicitly, basically. And so that's where, I think you're doing amazing work in saying, no, but wait a minute, this was the basis of Bernie's economic plan, and this is the basis behind anything that we're going to do in the future as well.
Awesome. So Nick, I'm going to be very gracious to you, my friend, because you were very gracious to me and gave me a lot of your time. I want to leave you with a parting shot for everyone before you go. Whatever you need to tell them, and then we'll go ahead and close it off so you can get to your conference call.
Well, let me say that, I want everyone to take a minute to reflect on how far we've come. There really has been a shift in the progressive zeitgeist in what we need. We don't have scientific polls, of course, but there have been a number of Twitter polls that ask people, what should we do? Should we reform the Democratic Party? They ask progressives. Should we join an existing third party? Should we start a new party? Basically draft Bernie to a new party. And getting Bernie to start a new party is overwhelmingly the favorite in all of them. And so like, that's truly remarkable. I think it's remarkable that we have made so much progress in so little time. We've been around for about 2 months. And obviously that's not just us. We're riding a wave of what people are naturally coming to the conclusion of. I meet people who've never heard of Draft Bernie, and they say, yeah, that's what I thought too. And that's not uncommon. And so I'll leave you with this too, is that for anyone, we have a robust organizing plan. We've got organizers, state leads, regional leads across the country. We've been busy building this, working with some fantastic Bernie 2016 campaign organizers, campaign staff who've been running the organizing for us. And so we are working in order to using that infrastructure to collect signatures to Bernie, to deliver it to him. And so I ask that everyone go to our website, draftbernie.org, join us, sign up to volunteer, join our national calls. I'm going to have a national call in about 20 minutes. You can go over to the Draft Bernie for a People's Party page. You can sign up. It's on Maestro, and you can join us on that call. And you can you'll get a sense for what we're doing to organize, basically. And so I want to leave everyone with that, the fact that we have a crowd pack as well. We're going to be organizing at the Science March, getting petition signatures to Bernie, organizing next week. Also at the Climate March. We also have a thunderclap because next Wednesday, Steve, I think you're going to like this. We are going to be having a massive phone bank day into Bernie's office. We're going to deluge his office with calls the entire day and really get the attention. Bernie's always telling us, hey, people, your representatives answer. It makes an impact when you call, when they get a lot of calls. Well, guess what? That's what we're doing now. There's a thunderclap. We've got that. We'll be putting that up on our page soon. So join, because that's going to post on thousands of pages simultaneously on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, with Bernie's DC number and his Vermont number, asking people to call in, make that big impression. And so come and join us in those things, and let's really show Bernie that this is what we're looking for now.
All right. Very good, Nick. Thank you so much. And I hope you'll come back with us again, give an update. I appreciate your work on trying to bring about a third party that can help all progressives so that I appreciate it more than you'll ever know. May I ask that you somehow or another, I'll help you, get some of those economists to come onto your calls so people can hear. I'm more than willing to talk, but there are people. I'm John the Baptist. You need to bring the big heavy hitters in there because we need to wake up the nation so we can demand a new deal today.
Let me clear up one more misconception, Steve. Well, I've got you. Is that we're an all volunteer organization, and none of us has made any money off of this. So, we work very hard. That's a difficult balance for a lot of us to strike. But we do this because we really believe in it. I work on this full time. I live off of the savings that I made on the campaign and at our revolution. And I won't be able to do that forever, but that's how much I believe in this, that it has to be done. So thanks for giving it a platform, Steve.
You got it, man. Have a good night, Nick. And everyone, thank you so much for joining Real Progressives. Let's keep pushing the third-party narrative, and let's make this thing happen. With that, I'm Steve Grumbine, Nick Brana. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.